Hello and welcome to Transforming Tomorrow from the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jane Bebbington. Love it or hate it, find out how AI is being used to analyse companies' modern slavery statements.
Jan, have you ever faked a reference?
What do you mean, faked a reference?
Have you ever written something about yourself in the hope of getting a job, pretending to be someone else?
No.
I'm going to read some words to you.
Heavens.
I have 3 different sentences.
Uh-huh.
Jan Bebbington is a prominent academic known for her work in accounting, sustainability and social and environmental reporting. She is widely recognised for advancing how organisations measure and report their environmental and social impacts. Did you not write that about yourself? Or is that not quite complimentary enough?
No, it sounds a wee bit flowery.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Jan Bebbington is important because she helps redefine what accountability means in business and government.
Oh, I don't like the important thing, but the other bit is not so bad.
Now, what about this one? Professor Jan Bebbington is a truly remarkable scholar whose career exemplifies the very best of purposeful, impactful academic work.
Well, I'm not going to say the word, but that's BS, I would say.
So you're trying to tell me you didn't write any of these?
No, I don't think I did.
Because from what I'm told, AI has to have a source to go on when it creates words and profiles.
Well, all of those words
So when I typed
exist.
into it, can you describe Jan Bebbington? And it came out with these 3 descriptions. You had nothing to do with it. You haven't been, fiddling the system.
No, I can tell you I haven't. And I tell you why I think it's AI, is that it's both...
Because I just told you.
No, too general, but also too fluffy. I mean, that would be like toe curling to describe yourself in that way.
I'm going to read another one, right? And you have to guess who this is about. X is by any measure a quietly indispensable force at one of the UK's finest business schools.
Do you think it's our guest or is it you?
It's me. I'm glad you didn't think it was you, because I left the name out of that one, and you might have said, is that me as well? But no, apparently I'm a quietly indispensable force.
I find that I find some of that description inaccurate.
But I won't read the name of our guest yet, but this is what it says about our guest. He is a scholar of genuine distinction, bringing intellectual rigour and real-world relevance to everything he touches. I particularly like the everything he touches bit at the end. I like to think that when he's at home making dinner, he is bringing real-world relevance to his meals. We've got an episode about AI, Jan. Had you guessed that?
I had guessed that. But also, I hope by the end of it, because I have a bit of a sense of what we're going to talk about, that you'll realise there's different uses of AI, and what you've just described as maybe as entertaining though it is not perhaps the best use of AI.
No, maybe not the best. And it irked me somewhat because in order to get these answers from 2 different AI engines, I had to create an account for one of them. One of them I have via work because it's done via a company that does just about everything on your computers. But the other one I had to create an account just to get it to tell me.
I love the word
what.
irked.
Yes.
I hope this isn't indicative of your mood for the entire podcast.
Of course it is. We're talking about AI. You know my views on AI and my love of it and everything it stands for.
Wow.
Yes.
Can we change your mind, do you think?
Well, let's find out if there are some proper uses for AI that are not just practical, but worthwhile and can make a real impact in the world of sustainability, shall we?
Yes, please.
Yes. Let's bring back a very old friend of the show. Not that he's very old. It was just he was one of the first episodes that we spoke to him. Someone who is from the Department of Accounting and Finance here at Lancaster University, who previously spoke to us about his work on modern slavery reporting and regulation, and who is now back to explain how AI can be used in that. Hello, Dr. Mahmoud Gad.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Jan. Thanks for having me. I like this introduction because it's more realistic than the ones that you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So are you trying to tell me that you don't have real-world relevance or bring real-world relevance to everything you touch?
Well, no. I try.
Yes. Intellectual rigour, is that more accurate?
That's recognisable.
Yeah. When you're marking your child's homework and telling them what they've done wrong, that's the intellectual rigour side of it.
Yeah, probably.
It's very good to see you again, Mahmoud, and to have you here bringing us up to date, because I guess this is almost like the next step from what we spoke about last time about modern slavery reporting regulation and analysis. Can you just remind us of, when it comes to modern slavery reports here in the UK, what are they, who makes them, and what they're meant to contain?
So the Modern Slavery Act was kind of enacted 2015 in the UK. And the main idea was asking UK companies with large business in the UK, 36 million pounds or more, to produce an annual statement on the actions that companies are making to detect, remediate, and kind of mitigate modern slavery in their businesses and their supply chain. And that's basically kind of the main requirement for companies. Companies have to talk about the risk assessments and talk about the structure of the business, their supply chain, and how they are dealing with modern slavery indicators and how they are remediating them.
When we last spoke, you had produced a report for the Financial Reporting Council to help them understand the quality of the modern slavery reports. But that was about 2.5 years ago. So what have you been up to in this area since then?
I think 3 things have happened since then. There was updating the guidance. So the Home Office issued kind of an updated, more detailed guidance in March 2025. And I can talk later about this. But we have also been working since the publication of our report that was done for the Financial Reporting Council and the Anti-Slavery Commissioner on building an anti-slavery intelligence platform with the goal of kind of scaling the analysis and the measuring the performance of modern slavery statement quality. And we have used this platform to analyze a large number of statements, and some of the results might be uncomfortable as well. So we continue to find the results that are not necessarily pleasant.
Paul, I don't know if you know, but we're both accounting scholars.
Really?
Yes.
Really? I seem to remember the first time. No, I don't know if Mahmoud was the first guest you brought on with the, and here's another accountant. No, we're going to talk about his accounting.
Like that. So traditionally, when we've been trying to understand, the quality of reporting, it involves, for a cohort of companies, selecting the reports and reading them manually. So I wonder if, for our listeners, Mahmoud, if you could say something about that process and then the limitations of approaching reading reports in that way.
So as you said, the work was mostly done manually. So whether that's by academics, even actually the investment community, when they started doing this analysis, it was mostly manual. And also NGOs. So most of the work that was done on these statements was typically manual. Kind of the biggest issue is that with manual analysis, you are looking at most a few numbers of statements that you can analyze manually. And typically it's likely a snapshot. So you focus on these 100 statements in 2025. So you are limited by the sample. You are limited by kind of the time series you can analyze. And of course, with us as humans trying to interpret things, we kind of tend to have our own views on, is this really an evidence of, say, remediation? We can have kind of different views. And then that's why some people try to ask, say, more than one reviewer to review a statement. Then someone has to kind of create an agreed scoring for a typical criteria. So it was kind of an intensive process before using AI.
Does it create issues if you don't have the same person reading it in the first place? Because if they, as an individual, have their own individual tendencies, biases, and then they've read half the reports and a different person has read the other half of the reports with different biases and personal preferences, etc., does that create issues if it's only been done by people and rather than computers?
It creates issues, and that's why kind of some people try to find sort of a moderator that looks at those different people's kind of assessments and try to moderate them into an agreed score. But again, still, also even the moderator view has some subjectivity kind of embedded in it.
And I guess the best you get is an agreed subjectivity.
Which is almost like you get a medium for every, or a mean, or for every one of the reports that's done. And therefore, do you end up where maybe you should have more of an extremes at either end, but you actually end up with everything being moderated by people having slightly different views?
I think it's, for me, when I've been involved in these processes, either as a moderator or one of the initial coders, it's not so much that you get a reversion around a mean, because that wouldn't be a very good outcome, because as you say, it sort of homogenizes it. but there'll be some element that when I read it in a really different way from somebody else, in which case, if you identify that, you then have to go back and recode everything. So there's quite a few cycles in and around to be able to get there. I think the biggest number I ever coded was about 120 or so with my dear colleague Carlos Laranaga. At the end of it, he asked me that to never ask him to do that with me ever again because
I know how he feels.
I'm really lousy at coding, and it just took us so long.
And the issue is that basically, if you think about it, I mean, what regulators typically have in mind when they ask companies to disclose information is to allow for the market forces, people, investors, community, academics to discipline this disclosure. And if we really have this sort of subjectivity and ability to analyze only a small number of statements, that kind of affects how we can discipline that disclosure.
Carlos analysed about the number of papers with you that we've done podcast episodes.
Oh, that's really quite funny.
That's when he walked away and said, never work with me again. Just a comment.
No, but there's also a really important thing that Mahmoud just said then as well, and that's the idea of issue opacity. So if you're regulating for what you should see in a modern slavery report, because everyone's situation is different and you're wanting to get an outcome, but you can't specify all the in-between bits of that outcome, then the guidance itself is sort of kind of open as well. So you've got open guidance on a report that people choose to write in a particular way given their own sensibilities, and then you've got a bunch of people. So you can kind of see how the threads of this particular cloth starts to fray.
It's almost like judging in gymnastics or ice skating,
yes.
where that someone performs in a way that they think is the best performance, but the judges might have a view themselves. They'll have told you what you need to come out with at the end, but how you go about it might be different, and therefore you get marks down. And where you have TV commentators sometimes say, that was the best display I've ever seen, and then the marks come out and the person they're talking about was dead last. Well, obviously not quite the best before. Yeah, you've got people with different viewpoints at either end of the scale, which I guess is where we bring in our old friend, artificial intelligence, Mahmoud.
Yeah.
Why? That is just a general question whenever I think about AI, why?
Yeah.
But yeah, particularly with this one, why did you develop the AI program platform?
So building on what kind of you and Jan have been just mentioning, it's basically if you really need to answer the question, is the regime working? You really need to look at the whole sample. You need to look at the population, say all publicly listed companies over, say, 5-6 years and do this kind of analysis. And doing this by hand is really difficult. And there was no study was able to do this work. So the goal was basically not to replace human judgment, but to scale what kind of human experts do when they analyze these statements kind of at a large sample, so that we can answer the question whether the regime is working, whether kind of interventions that happened, say, in March 2025 made a difference. So looking at a few statements with the subjectivity kind of involved sort of does not really help us to answer that question.
In this context, what is meant by an AI platform? Because AI is attached to sort of like a multitude of things. So what kind of thing is this platform?
Yeah. So I'd say kind of a naive thinking would be basically, I am going to put modern slavery statement of company X into an AI model, ask it to score it. And that's a horrible thing to do. Why? You will find that AI models are going to make a lot of assumptions on your behalf. Okay? What criteria the model is going to use to analyze these statements? What is actually an evidence? And what statement? And what is this company? What industry it belongs to? All of this information, the model is going to make an assumption on your behalf. And most likely you won't know what are the assumptions. So there's a black box where all of these decisions have been taken on your behalf, and most likely will end up with an incorrect score. You can put the statement over and over again, and you will always get a very different results every time because different assumptions are applied every time. So kind of the platform we are doing, basically think of it as AI is like an engine, and we built kind of a whole harness around it, kind of the car around this engine that guides this engine to do the work in the way that we wanted it to do. So this is kind of the idea of a platform. So we give the model, here is the model, we give it some tools. For example, in our case, we give the model access to Companies House information. So the model can go there, can access information about the company for Companies House, including the company number. And this company number, the model is going to take and look at the modern slavery registry. So these are all facts. The model can't make this up. So the model is going to take this number, go to the modern slavery registry, cross-check some information, and these are part of the criteria that we kind of use to analyze the statements. So these are all facts. The model can make assumptions on our behalf. Then we feed the model criteria. In our case, it's now 60 criteria. And for each criteria, we give detailed guidance. And this kind of builds on that we did some manual work before. So we kind of, okay, now this is what could be an evidence on this item. This what should not be treated as an evidence on this item. So the model now has kind of complete sort of, think of it as guardrail around how it should think. But also we kind of enforce the model to output the audit trail of all the decisions that's being made. So everything is transparent. So if you as a company or if you are as an NGO wanted to know why this is scored for this particular criteria, you can know. You can get the exact quotes from the statements that are used to give that particular score.
So we talked about bias in the human ones. How do you avoid any kind of bias when you've given it this criteria that it needs to analyse and how it needs to analyse it?
So this is basically like, okay, can we trust why should we trust these results? Mm-hmm. So you can't completely kind of really eliminate the bias. But we did three things that sort of tries to assure people that we are kind of did something that's not completely irrelevant. So the first thing, we are grateful for the CCLA Investment Management. Their experts have manually scored modern slavery statements, and they give us this data. And what we did, we used our model to score the same statements, and we measured the accuracy of our model to get as close as to what those human experts kind of see in a statement as evidence. And we kind of use traditional measures of accuracy. And one number I can mention now is something called recall rate. So this is like out of all the things that the model should pick up that are picked by human, how much you are able to pick up. And we have 94% recall rate, which is kind of very highly acceptable in these kind of models. Also, we have, as academics, we tend to kind of submit our papers for peer review. So the pipeline, kind of the AI pipeline we used, that's kind of is the backup for this model, how the model works. We submitted to one of the largest AI conferences in the world. It's called the International Conference for Artificial Intelligence. It's peer reviewed, accepted for demonstration track, where we're going to demonstrate the pipeline for the audience in this conference. Third, is basically everything is transparent. So you can get exactly why a given score is given for a specific company, including quotes from the statements that are used to support this score.
So you say that it's got like a 94% recall rate compared to what humans should see. How much would the average human see? Because I know obviously you'd want a human to pick up 100% of everything, but humans don't. So humans make errors too. Is therefore the error rate, that 6% that isn't there, is that similar to what, say, a human reading a report would have?
I don't have specific numbers, but because, if you ask a human to score it, then there might be some kind of error rate. If you ask another human to kind of say, okay, is this correct? The other human will have his own biases, then you can't really judge. What we use, the norm here is to look for what an expert going to score a given statement, and then what our AI model, how accurate is our AI model relative to what those experts are going to score. So the idea is kind of really not to replace them, but can we scale what those experts are doing at kind of really a larger sample?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And where does this happen? I mean, does it happen... so I don't know what any of the model names are, really. So does it happen
Naomi Campbell, Kate Moss.
You're dating yourself now.
My knowledge of supermodels nowadays is minimal at best.
So there are obviously commercial models where you can ask them questions as Paul did for our introductions, etc. Does this happen in a commercial model, or does it happen in some sort of other bespoke space?
So this happens in a commercial model. And we kind of, in our platform, we kind of are using all the analysis being done in the UK. So we use something called UK data residency. So all the statements are sent within a data center in the UK. So the analysis kind of really done in the back end is done within the UK. So it's not sent to somewhere that we don't know. So kind of GDPR compliant. And it uses kind of the compute power of these models to do the analysis in the back end. We use Google Cloud Platform to sort of do the analysis in the back end.
Approximately how much time is saved then by using this as opposed to going through the old way of doing it? How many papers could be analysed in the time it took to analyse one by a human straight off?
So a given statement could go from several hours by a human to less than 5 minutes by the AI model. So I can give you just, for example, in analysis that we are currently working on, we analyzed all publicly listed companies that are required to produce modern slavery statements from 2023 to 2025. That was roughly 400 companies, 850 modern slavery statements in a day. So imagine if you kind of ask humans to do this work, how long it's going to take.
And even if you then need people to check and audit, you'd expect people to check and audit if someone had done this manually anyway. So therefore, the time has been saved, but you've still got the human element on the end of it to make sure that it's been done properly.
Again, also with the AI, of course, we need some human in the loop. So with these 850 kind of statement analysis, you need some intervention at some point to make sure all is going in the right directions.
And I suppose what's really exciting about that is that most of our studies of corporate reporting have been on samples, either samples of a subset of companies or a subset of times, and often they are prepared not using the same research instrument. So you might have results about a certain piece of reporting, but it's all varied because everyone's done their own sort of study. Whereas is it unusual now we can talk about actually researching whole populations, everyone's?
Exactly. So this is something that I guess what's going to come now with the scalability that AI is producing. Again, assuming that we have built the right car around the engine, we can really do a lot of work in that sense. So, and I can tell you the models have kind of moved a long way from, say, late 2022 or early 2023, because when we started this project, it was really with, say, the early models that were released in 2023. And these models were hallucinating as much as you can. I mean, you can imagine now. It can fake everything. And basically, it had a very kind of short context window. So you can't put a statement to a model or like a large text to a model. So we used to use something called retrieval augmented generation at early stage. So what's the retrieval augmented generation is basically you are going to, instead of feeding the whole statement to a model and asking it, what are if the company has remediated the identified cases of modern slavery, you are going to start with a semantic search process. So the semantic search process is going to take your question, look for all the similar discussion within the statement, and you're going to summarize these kind of, say, 20 sentences and pass only these 20 sentences to the model, not the whole statement. Because the model had a very short context window. It cannot really process more than, say, 16,000 tokens, I guess, which is like less than, which is about 15,000 words or more or less. So now, context window can go to about 1 million tokens. So models can really read a full modern slavery statements. You can really force a model to follow your instructions, so much better than before. So things are improving, and this will take us into this process where we can analyze the whole population with some uncertainty, but we can really control this level of uncertainty.
Imagine if you'd had a similar thing when you were doing all your analysis in those dusty Scottish archives, looking at Highland clearances and what have you in the 17th, 18th century.
I mean, it is a game changer in that respect, which is why, because I've sort of start off in general, both ignorant and hostile to AI and use in these kind of applications, but I've becoming more informed by conversations with Mahmoud and with others, and think, there might be something here that can really increase the reach and the rigor of work.
So if it is to be useful, who's going to use it? Who do you see being able to use this database, this platform, and how?
I would say at least regulators who wanted to have a macro view on how things are happening in terms of modern slavery reporting. Is the system working or not? I think these kind of whole population analysis will give some indication. I would say also companies themselves, because what our platform really produces is basically a score for a company. And then how your score compares to your competitors, like industry peers, but also similar size firm. So as a company, say if you're a manufacturing company, you will get your score. And how your score looks like relative to all other manufacturing firms. But also if you are a FTSE 100 firms, how your score compares relative to those FTSE 100 firms. And then you will get some feedback on, okay, what are the things that looks good? What are the things that you can work on? And how can you improve these things? So I guess companies, especially mid-market firms that are invisible to scrutiny by investors' benchmarks, I would imagine those companies will find some value in it because they don't have those large compliance teams that can look at the statements and really work this out. So I guess these are part of the beneficiaries of the tool.
I had a nasty flashback then to benchmarking and your your seafood benchmark table where the reports were done and what companies could do based upon that by comparing themselves to other ones. Yes, yeah.
But I think the other really interesting thing you said is about these mid-market firms. So that might be a phrase that's unfamiliar to our listeners. So maybe say who they are, because they are, if you like, the bulk of the activity and the people with have, say, the less resource. But what is a mid-market firm?
Well, it can be defined in different ways. So in our case, we are looking at firms that, say, below FTSE 350. So if you are not in the top 350 firms in the stock market, you are a mid-market firm. But you can define it in very different ways, by assets, by total sales, by number of employees. But we argue that these are the companies that are not in the spotlight, but also don't have enough teams that do this work for compliance work on modern slavery.
So bigger than your micro businesses, your really small SMEs, but not at the top scale. So those ones, like you say, right in the middle of it all.
So then it becomes more of a learning tool for them. So while it might be an evidence tool for the reporting council, it's a help me do this better tool for companies.
What's the reaction been then from the reporting council? Because obviously you worked with them at the very start of this process. Have they been along for the ride with you on using AI and seeing how it might be worked with them?
So we have just finished the tool was out only recently, and we have just finished the analysis, and we are in the process of writing this up. And the goal, hopefully, we're going to send them the results of our analysis to bring attention to the tool on what can be done in this space.
Yeah. So what's next for you in this exciting journey?
So you've gone from manual reporting to AI reporting to what comes after AI reporting? Quantum computer reporting.
I wasn't quite on that trajectory, but I could see. So what next for this research agenda, but also for your work in this area?
I do think for the research agenda is to try to publish this report, this analysis of 850 firms, because some of the results there might be informative. So I'll give you just one example. We followed companies in the due diligence chain, and you see basically amongst companies with that says we do a rigorous risk assessment. So these are 67% of firms in our analysis. Only 67% says that we do a rigorous assessment. And amongst these firms, 40% only provide information about the audit protocol. And then as you move down, grievance, whistleblowing, and identification, we are talking about only 9% of firms identify actual modern slavery, and then 4% remediate, and then 2% provide satisfactory remediation. So you can see this is like a funnel, and it keeps collapsing as you move down the due diligence chain, especially when the evidence is really needed. So you have a system here, and you say, okay, I'm doing rigorous risk assessment, but you are not detecting. And given that modern slavery is really endemic, it's really strange that you are doing all of this risk assessment and you're not finding modern slavery. And what we found this also is that basically companies with low scores in terms of due diligence in 2023 continue to have low scores kind of 2024, 2025. So this is one of the things that kind of poor reporters continue to be poor reporters. On average, companies kind of seems to be marginally improving. If you look at the whole market, there is kind of marginal improvement in terms of the scores. But what's really interesting is that 95% of firms that say we find indicators provide really detailed mitigation steps. So kind of the bottlenecks here is for companies to say we identified cases of modern slavery. So once companies identify these, kind of we think this would lead to detailed mitigation steps, which is kind of the whole goal of the process.
Well, Mahmoud, thank you so much. You've brought us up to date and seen that next step from the work that we talked about almost 3 years ago now. And it does seem like there might actually be a use for AI that's reasonably useful.
Well done, Mahmoud. Well done.
That's about as high praise as you're going to get from me on artificial intelligence. Thank you, Mahmoud.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Paul.
In just 3 years, you can see how much Mahmoud's work has moved on and how the use of AI has allowed him to build upon what he already had and take it to another level and get so much more use out of it.
Absolutely. And it sounds like that's both the models moving on, but then the approaches to using the models as well. And I really liked his analogy of an engine. And it's what you build around it that makes it robust.
I liked what he said as well. 2023, it was producing so many essentially mistruths and fictions, and they've worked on it over 3 years. And if you imagine with the AI that we're all using in our lives, how much generalities there is there, whereas this is on a very narrow subject, and it's taken them 3 years of concentrated work on this narrow area to get it to a stage where those fabrications are no longer there and everything's being produced to that great level of accuracy. 94% of what should be being picked up is being picked up. Brilliant. That demonstrates the great task there must be with AI on the global scale of making sure that it's not making up anything.
And I think it's that differentiation between like a general, ask and see what you get, and actually having it under these guardrails and supervising it very closely, which I thought was amazing. I really liked some of the findings they had at the end of this process as well. And one of the concepts I found really engaging is the idea of a collapsing funnel. Because I've seen collapsing funnels in all sorts of other areas of work as well. So looking at Tim Lamont's work that looked at the restoration practices of companies and what they say about it, that had this collapsing process going on as well. But likewise looking at biodiversity disclosure by ocean companies, by indicators disclosure around the TNFD. So collapsing funnels is something I think, for a select number of our listeners will go, oh yeah, let's going to use that phrase because it captures it. The other thing that I really liked is that he talked about bottlenecks. So if you are unable to disclose this particular piece of information, either because you don't know what's going on or you decide not to say anything about it, then everything else sort of wanes off. So that bottleneck idea, I think, is a really important one as well.
Yeah, I know what you're saying about the collapsing funnel. Some of the numbers he was giving out there, where you've got from 67% of firms who are doing the reporting bit and doing it okay, down to there's only 2%, I think was the last number he gave, where he'd gone through various things such as whistleblowing and stuff like this, and then mediation, and then satisfactory mediation was the last one, and 2%. That's showing that whilst people are at the top level, the people who've gone all the way through the process to get such a small amount, but still lots of work to do. And he did, calmed some of my worries about all the AI biases in there. They'd obviously put an awful lot of thought and consideration into how to account for the biases by having so many people involved who are experts in the field getting it fed in. It's not just that one voice that's putting all the information in and telling the AI what to do, and therefore the AI will produce things with that person's voice. They've got lots of expertise in there, and I was really happy to see that. And it's good to know that if they're able to use this to get firms to climb up the funnel, I don't know if that's that's a way, rather than sinking through the plug hole, then even better.
Yeah.
If they're able to say, look, this is what our report says to you, you could do this and you will climb up a bit, then that's what we can do.
Yeah. No, I thought that potential to unlock better reporting, and we believe, because there is some evidence, but more evidence is always welcome, that good quality reporting often replicates in good quality practice. Not straightforwardly, but there is a connection there that could be drawn out.
Well, we can see the end of our funnel because next week is our last episode
Heavens.
of this season.
Wow.
So
Who are we going to talk to?
Well, I was going to talk to this strange lady I met once on a train. Oh, no, that wasn't me. It's just me and you, Jan.
Wow.
We're going to wrap up, discuss all the various topics that have appeared a long way through lots of episodes.
No, that's tremendous. And how many episodes have we done, more or less?
This will be episode 43 of this
Heavens,
season.
just like
Yes,
that.
Yeah, 43 weeks of me and you and various victims who've sat in the chair next to us.
That sounds great.
Yes, you can be the victim next week. Until then, thank you very much for listening. It's goodbye from me, Paul Turner.
And me, Jan Babington.